Hey guys, Brett McGowan, writer-creator of Changeling Urban Fairy Tale, and today I want to talk about what I personally consider to be the pinnacle of black and white art in comics, and that would be The Crow by James O'Barr. This is a special edition trade paperback that was published by Pocket Books Graphic. By Pocket Books. That's the name of the publisher, Pocket Books. This is, like I said, most people are more than likely going to be familiar with the movie that starred the late Brandon Lee, which, by the way, is like my favorite movie of all time. I don't know how many other people have actually taken a look at the comic, because originally, it's been a while since I talked about this. Looked at the history. I haven't talked about this in a long time, actually. But my recollection of the history behind The Crow as a comic was that it was originally published by James O'Barr through Kitchen Sink Press. And, but what even kind of puts a lot more of this into perspective is just learning, learning the context this book was made under. So to get one thing out of the way, if you're like one of the few people who doesn't know this. So when James O'Barr was working on The Crow, it was in the aftermath of the death of his girlfriend. She was killed in a drunk driving accident, and he made this as a way of dealing with his grief and working out his emotions. And in his own words, it was cheaper than going to therapy. So, the story in the comic is more or less the same as it was in the book, in the movie. But I would say the difference is that it's the details and how it's presented. So, like, the movie, it's kind of the movie streamlined the story, made it more accessible. Well, because the movie opens up with Eric's death, and then as he comes back 1 year later from beyond the grave, we slowly start to learn how it happened to him. That's all established within like the first act of the movie. In the comic, let's see how far back does it take us to learn? Yeah. Oh yeah, it wasn't up until let's see, which issue was it? Yeah, it wasn't until issue 4 that we learned how Eric got into this situation. And not only that, it makes his death is a lot more senseless than it was in the movie. Which I also think, which kind of goes into, makes more sense, which is an odd thing to say. It makes more sense considering that how his girlfriend died. Because Eric's death in the comic, it's just a random act of violence for no reason. Like, everything that happens to him and Shelley, like, it's just, like I said, it's just completely senseless. Whereas in the movie, the reason why they got killed was because they were dealing with some tenant rights, and their apartment just happened to be owned by the big crime boss in Detroit. So, yeah. It's, like I said, going into this expecting it to play out like it did in the movie, like you're probably more or less going to be disappointed. Because it does not, because even though the story is more or less the same, generally speaking, it's the details and how the events unfold that are very different. So, if you're going to seek this comic out, I would actually pretty much suggest that you watch the movie first, actually. Because, to be honest, if you go into this first, if you go into this first, then you're just going to, if you go, there's this, a lot of what happens is going to throw you for a loop, whereas if you've seen the movie first, you can kind of piece into your head, oh, wait, I remember how that happened. Okay, this is, like, you start to get a, you start to pick up very quickly, okay, so this is different. This is, the way this happened is different. But the biggest reason why I think like this is something you should at least own in your collection is just, I'm not kidding when I say it. I think James O'Barr was the pinnacle of black and white comic art. Like, this is some of the most beautiful, detailed, and moody, atmospheric kind of black and white comic art I've ever seen. Like, it's one of those things where I can say like every panel's a painting or something. And I would especially urge you to seek out this trade paperback because it comes in with extra content that I don't think you're going to find in like the original Kitchen Sink run. Let's see if I can. Like you learn to spot it pretty quickly. Let's see where. Let's see. Like there's these like for one there's these little interludes with like little bits of poems and songs that James O'Barr is a fan of. Oh, and then there's this Steel Cowboy sequence, which I think is not Steel Cowboy. I mean Skull Cowboy or something. Fuck, I don't know what he is. It's all like it all looks kind of like a dream. It's like this is one of those things that makes sense once you go back and reread it. Yeah, there's... And like I said, this thing is worth owning just for the artwork alone, in my opinion. And not just that, yeah. And just, you're not going to find anything like this in comics ever. It's that unique. You can there's even this little afterword by I do not know who this person is. A. Anastasio. And there's even seems to be like extra. There also seems to be like extra artwork that O'Barr did. Yeah. And then there's a couple Joy Division songs in it. It's It's like I said, it's a package that's worth owning in my opinion, just for the artwork alone, especially if you loved the movie. So, I picked this up at Barnes & Noble like a decade ago. I would assume it's still in print. If you can find this, definitely get it. I picked it up for like I think $20 at Barnes & Noble. Just all I can say is that if you are a fan of The Crow, if you like black and white comics, I think you owe it to yourself to get this book, especially just for the artwork, and especially go into this like after you've seen the movie. Watch the movie first, then go into this, and I would also encourage you to sort of learn a little bit about the history behind it, just because it all makes things make more sense. And it's because this isn't the story this is telling is less about Eric the character and more about James O'Barr the creator. This is him trying to. You really do feel like the pain and grief on every page that he put into this. It can be hard to relate to, but if you've at times, but I think if you've lost someone close to you, this book is going to strike a chord with you in a lot of places. Now, fair warning, gets very graphic. You probably even caught a couple bits. Like the violence is very graphic. There's some graphic drug use. This is not a book intended for minors. I would not expose this to. I would not let kids see this. This thing is not for them at all. But if like I said, if you liked The Crow or the movie, it's just, I honestly don't think you can go wrong with this. And I really mean it when I say this. This truly is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of black and white comic book art. You're never going to see. You'd be hard pressed to find, or at least I would be. I've been hard pressed to find black and white comic art that looks as good as this, and it's one of those cases where I honestly think adding color would take away from it. It's just, it would not work. So, yeah. That's all